not federal, like state regulation. Obviously, there's no.
When most people hear the name Adolf Hitler, they tend to not associate it with a book he wrote called In Boundless Love, because the fact of the matter is most people don't even know that Adolf Hitler wrote a book on love. Most people, when we think of Adolf Hitler, we tend to associate him with the 1933 tragedy of the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, he had over 11 million people murdered. He sanctioned the murder of over 6 million Jews, and it was completely done legally and under the legal protection of governmental laws. Adolf Hitler said that the Jews are undoubtedly a race, but not humans. Essentially, by applying this dehumanizing trait to the Jews, he was able to construct in his mind a conception that they don't have the right to live and that they just don't have rights, period. So once he got them into concentration camps, they devised some death tactics and experiments that they carried out on adults and small children. Some of these included injections of sodium cyanide, ocean salt water, gassing, skinning, beheading, and even burying them alive. Unfortunately for us in America today, there are similar death tactics and experiments being conducted at rates which far surpass that of the Holocaust. And they aren't being done on adults or small children, they're being done on babies. Today I'll be talking to you about abortion. I'll be discussing life when it begins, the procedures used to abort, and the misconceptions and contradictions of the abortion argument. First, when does life begin? We'll just start to lay it out with the biblical concept of it. Life begins in the womb. The Bible says that you're knitted together in the womb, and in the womb God knew you and formed you. Life, according to science, is that it is at conception that they consider that life, because at conception, the genetic makeup of a human baby is 100% complete. The baby's gender, hair color, height, skin color, eye color, and all its other traits are 100% there at conception. NASA concluded that after 25 days after conception, the baby's growing at an astounding 4 million cells per day, and if it were to continue that rate all the way up until it was born, it would be 1.5 tons. It's like a little elephant. Life, according to healthcare, is if the baby has something has a heartbeat, it is considered life, and the heartbeat of a baby starts around 18 days after conception. So they conclude 18 days after conception. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that life defined by an abortionist is that they just aren't sure when life begins. They know that when it comes out, it's considered a baby, but when it's in there, it's not to them. So my question is there any possibility that they're making a mistake? If I were to have rigged a place with dynamite and said, okay, everybody, you have 10 seconds to be out, and as I'm standing there with the detonator, you see people running out, and I guarantee someone would run up to me and say, hey, you might want to give it a little bit more time, make sure all the lives, make sure all the people get out of there. So too, every time that you give a pregnant lady a little bit more time, she will always have a baby octopus. No, she has a baby. It's always, when a woman's pregnant, she'll always end up having a baby. So what are the procedures used to abort babies? The first is called suction and aspiration, and is what it is. There's a little vacuum that's 29 times more powerful than that of your vacuum at your house, which if you ever go, it leaves a little red mark. So it's so powerful, they dilate the cervix so that the baby is then easily got to. They insert the suction device, and they suction the baby out, which chops it into pieces. Next is called dilation and curettage, which is basically the same thing. If the suctioning doesn't work, they go in there with a little sharp tool. It's not the cure for anything. I don't know why they call it the curettage. And they'll dilate the cervix so the baby's head comes down a little bit more, making it easier to go in there with one and chop it up into small pieces so then they can use the suctioning device to get it out. Next is called dilation and evacuation, and that is where they use little tongs to grab the baby while it's inside the womb still, pull it apart until it can be surgically removed. The last is the saline injection, which is somewhat similar to that used in the Holocaust, where they'll go into the mother's womb, no sacred place on earth, insert an injection to where it will then burn the baby, and the baby aspirates it so that it dies by the saline injection and burns. Two that I'll just touch on is a C-section. They cut the umbilical cord so the baby's deprived of oxygen and nutrients, thus dying in the womb. And then once it's able, the body will force contractions because they realize that something went wrong, doing a spontaneous abortion. And the last one was banned in 2003 because it's called a partial birth, and it was a combination of them all. Congress ruled it as inhumane procedure that is never necessary or should be performed. And what it was they used the little tongs to grab the baby's feet, leaving the head in there, pulling everything but the head out so that the torso's completely there, because if the head's delivered, then legally it's considered a baby, and if they were to kill it when it's outside, even within that 1 second, so if they messed up and pulled the head out, they can't kill it there. So they leave the head in, they go in with a tool, the one that they use for dilation and curettage, the curettage, cut the baby's head open, thus using the suctioning device to suction out the baby's brain, delivering a dead baby. This is the sounds of the lost. For every 10th BD that you hear fall represents 10,000 lives that were lost in America's great wars. First is World War I. Next is World War II. Next is the September 11th and the War on Terror. And this is the babies aborted since it was legalized in 1970. 54,559,615 babies aborted total. 1,818,653 babies per year, or today 4,983 babies will be aborted. That clip goes for another 12 seconds, but I've got to cut it short. So my question is, when is abortion okay? Some of you out there are already looking at me saying, wait, I agree, there are way too many abortions, but I do believe that it should be okay under certain circumstances. So what you're either saying is A, you're justifying the murder of an unborn baby in the womb, or you're saying a contradiction, because if you don't believe it's a baby in the womb, then why do you care about how many fetuses are aborted each day? That just logically doesn't make sense. Secondly, you're going to ask me, what about in the case of rape? I'm going to ask you, what's worse, rape or murder? Because if it's a baby in the womb and you're justifying the murder of a baby, you're going to punish an unborn child for the crime of the father, because we technically have laws that help those against the unjust punishment of those who aren't guilty. So, next, you say, well, what if I don't believe that it's a baby? Then you're essentially doing what Adolf Hitler did in the Holocaust by saying, I don't believe that they're babies, even though they're eating, breathing, and sleeping just like they were in Auschwitz. And so I'm just going to say that they aren't humans and that they don't have the right to life. Next, what if they have bad quality or they're deformed? Well, Adolf Hitler in the camps took upwards of 1,500 kids with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and other mentally handicapped disorders, lined them up, killed them all because he stated that they didn't have the right to live because of their bad quality of life. And today, 9 out of 10 babies who have Down syndrome are aborted once found. So I leave you with a quote from Adolf Hitler: how fortunate for our leaders that men do not think. And I ask you guys, and I'm open to any responses, to just think and ask yourselves, and I'm going to ask you, it is okay to kill a baby in the womb when?
Anyone want to answer that question?
Please.
Oh, I had to ask.
No, but I have another question.
Ask away.
I'm wondering why you didn't put in your types of abortion, why you left out the pill, which is the most common form.
Chemical abortion? That was my question
Yeah.
Just because
Are you
those
familiar?
were those were no. Those
That's
are
the
just
most
mass.
common used in cases, early.
Well, I had 2 other slides, but I couldn't put them in. The second was what they did with the babies once they were aborted. Most women sign a legal waiver that says they get donated, and so they put them into little suction bags and freeze
Not
them.
with a chemical abortion, though.
No.
Are you familiar with what that is?
No, that was the chemical abortion.
No,
No.
a chemical abortion
It's
is a pill that
Are
you take.
you 486?
What?
Are you 486?
I don't know what the
called?
name of it, but basically you take a pill or a series of pills within the first 2 months, and basically it induces miscarriage. And so
It's the most
it's
common
just
Induces a spontaneous abortion.
absolutely,
Okay,
and
so,
so
what
there's
that does
no
is the
suction.
contractions. Well, I know, but if you look at that, when it induces labor, the contractions are actually so strong because it does false contractions that the baby's head usually pops off. Look it up and research it.
Yeah,
if you
but
don't
I
believe me.
have.
I know you work
I'm
there.
just
that's why.
saying, it actually you reabsorb. Like it's just as if you were having a
miscarriage.
It chemically induces a miscarriage in your body, and it is the most common form of abortion used.
And it can only be used
Does
up
it
until the 8th
spontaneously
week.
cause the contractions? Because that was the only thing cool I found.
No,
It causes release of the uterus.
yeah, it's, and it
The
happens
uterine
at so
lining.
small a place. You just, your body reabsorbs.
Oh.
I'm just curious, I mean, I was just wondering.
Oh, no,
You
no,
were
I
pretty
looked,
thorough
I
on
looked into one that was a
everything
chemical one, and that was the one that caused spontaneous contractions, and I was gonna touch on it and show the pictures of what they do with them afterwards. And the spontaneous abortions, when it causes
Basically let 'em go in the
contractions,
toilet.
contracts the uterus so hard that the baby usually pops off.
Yeah, and with the chemical, you can actually do it at home as well.
Mhm.
You don't have to be in a setting.
It's just a pill. I think they give it to you, I think most places they just give it to you, you have to take